disclosure with emphasis on the big picture and also emphasis on stressing the historical connection. She assisted very closely with filming the Italian witnesses in the Disclosure Project for 2001, and she was instrumental in bringing a vast array of critical people, including Dr. Stephen Greer, Linda Moulton Howe, Dr. Richard Boyland, Travis Walton, Michael Lindman, Nick Pope, Bill Hamilton, and Dr. John Mack to Italy. Her new nonprofit association, Starworks Italia, will continue to bring speakers to Italy and to promote disclosure and exopolitical dialogue worldwide. She's been interviewed by many top radio shows, and she's a regular on Tony Gill radio show as well. She's also been on Jeff Rench, George Norrie, Hilly Rose, Mike Murphy, one of my old friends from Kansas City, and Jim Hickman, among others. She's written for Nexus, UFO Magazine, and many, many other very, very important publications. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Paola Harris.
Thank you, Cheryl. Before I start talking, I'll have to hold this far away. I'd like to say a couple of things personally before I start telling you about my background and about what I have to say. First of all, if you are here today, you're part of something very interesting. We live in incredibly interesting times. And these times, information is the most powerful source you can have. And I have to guarantee you that coming from Europe and coming from the background that I come from, worldwide, this subject is taken seriously. I'm going to give you a little bit of a European perspective on what I call now exopolitics, what we used to call in the olden days the UFO phenomenon. You know, we've changed our terminology. On a very personal level, I want to start by thanking Stephen Bassett. I've never seen anything like this, a grassroots effort, and I really believe that the truth is going to come out this way. Grassroots effort. I don't think any government's going to admit that there has been a cover-up. I don't think it's going to come from the top down. I think it's going to come from you. And I think it's very, very important that you attend these lectures, that you connect the dots. And this is exactly what my book is about, connecting the dots. In this book are 25 of the most top-level researchers who have spent their lifetimes researching this phenomenon, who speak word for word, because I put the interviews in here, word for word on this phenomenon, and it includes, the last few chapters includes the paranormal, which is often left out of the UFO phenomenon, with my interviews with Russell Targ, with Uri Geller, with Courtney Brown, who was just mentioned in Michael Sala's talk, and with people that are looking at what we call the paranormal, which is very normal part of this phenomenon, which cannot be left out of the scientific part. I want to say something personally too, and I need to say this before I begin. It becomes very personal for me to do this work, very. And the people in this book are my friends. They usually come to Europe. I bring them there to speak to enormous gatherings of very serious researchers that are trying to figure this out. And they are present here, and I want to thank Richard Hoagland, who has done so much for me as far as bringing my work from Europe here. And I talk about him in this book because he is a very serious researcher. And I want to thank the family. I am a spokesperson for people who are no longer here, like Colonel Corso, Alan Hynek, and Dr. Michael Wolf. And I want to thank the family of Colonel Philip Corso, who are here also. Phil Corso Jr. and his wife, would you please stand up? Because these people have a lot to contribute. And I want to thank another researcher, because I'm always on internet talking to people. I get 50 emails a day, and I'm always communicating and networking, and that's what's going to make a difference. I want to thank Robert Vanderklok from New Jersey, who also knew the Colonel, because I have like the Colonel's family here to stand up, and he has written a lot. Stand up, Robert. On the Roswell case, and has spoken in Roswell. And these are people that are not making money on this. These are people that are passionate about this this subject. Now, when I worked with the Colonel in Italy, and I'll tell you my background, but I have to tell you this story. That's why this chair is here. When I worked with the Colonel in Italy, he was very adamant about disclosure. He said to me, the reason he did this was because he thought his grandchildren should know the truth. He did work under the Eisenhower administration, under the Kennedy administration, was head of intelligence from 1944 to 1947 in Rome, a very important fact. And Colonel Corso said to me, he said, I won't always be around, Paula. I am handing you a hot potato. He says, I want you to keep speaking about this. I want people to understand exactly what back engineering alien artifacts are about. I want them to understand that we've known about this for a long time. And he said, even though I may not be here, there will be an empty chair in the front row always. So here's the empty chair. I wanted to talk about this because this happens to me. I've spoken in Switzerland. I've spoken everywhere. And I feel really that these people that have had courage, and there's so many of these witness testimonies that are in my book that are here today. The people in Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, they've had courage to come along and tell the truth. And this is witness testimony. This isn't something that people have made up in science fiction. These are people that were involved in this, in the cover-up. These people have had a tremendous amount of courage and should not be forgotten. I'm going to start with my background because the book is connecting the dots. In Italian, it's called Il Mistero Svelato, and it's come out in Italian for the people in Italy because I live in Rome 9 months out of the year. So most of my work comes out of Rome. All right. Is there any way that we can just lower the lights a little bit? And then in about 3 minutes, I'm going to play the video. So if there's, don't go away, whoever's in the back there. Okay. Okay. Can you see this? No? Okay. All right. So maybe we could just dim the lights a little bit. Anyway, I'm gonna keep going in the interest of time. I just don't want to go into the other speaker's time, but there's a picture of Travis Walton giving me an award last year because with Starworks Italia, which is my own personal effort for disclosure, I brought to Italy last year to speak Travis Walton. After 28 years, you know the Travis Walton experience. I brought John Mack to speak in Florence, and I helped bring Linda Moulton Howe to the San Marino conference. And these are things that are ever so important for me, this idea of disclosure, and I'm bringing Richard Hoagland this summer to Italy. Now, when I started this career, people always say, well, how'd you get into this? Did you ever see a UFO? No, I have never seen a UFO. I have never seen it. I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I talk about this in my book. And I got very emotional at that scene at the very end when, Francois Truffaut has that contact with the alien. And I thought, why am I getting emotional about this? And I realized that Alan Hynek was the consultant with Steven Spielberg on this. So I wanted to meet him. And sure enough, there I am with Alan in 1980. And Dr. Roberto Pinotti, who's the head of our agency for UFO studies. And I began to work with Alan. Here's a letter that Alan wrote me about looking at a painting in Florence that had a UFO on it. Now, the painting in Florence is in Palazzo Vecchio. It has a UFO. You can see it. It is a Renaissance painting, and one of so many Renaissance paintings that has this evidence. What does this tell us? This tells us that the phenomenon has been going on for a long time. I don't have all the slides, and I don't have all that to show you, but it is on my website if you see it. Dr. Alan Hynek was the person that really got me going because of his method of research. He knew what he was doing. I mean, he was very compassionate. He was putting together, he was connecting the dots a long time ago, and working with him for 6 years helped me get started and helped me realize that this was a serious matter. Now, here's the magazine I worked for in Italy about 5 or 6 years ago. It is no longer operative. And I would bring stories like this one here. This is Ed Fouché, Alien Rapture, where he talked about working at Area 51. This is another witness testimony. And I would interview these people. There's a picture of Richard, because we are very interested in his work in Italy. And I would work for it because it's a little backwards. Also, the magazine Nexus, which is translated into Italian also. So these are the magazines I've worked for. What is happening now? We have a magazine going. I mean, you have UFO magazine, and God bless his heart, Graham Birdsall had UFO Magazine England, which was an incredibly beautiful magazine, and it is no longer operative either. We have UFO magazine here, we have Fate, we have other magazines that give you the disclosure that you need. In Italy, we have Notiziario UFO, and I write for that magazine. We also brought over, I see Stephen Greer and Robert Dean, and when they speak to enormous audiences, and I mean enormous audiences of interested people, it makes a difference. This is a worldwide disclosure. I want to talk really quickly about the difference in media in Europe and the difference in media here. This talked about the flyover in Washington, D.C. right here in 2000, I think it was in 2002 in July. This is on the front page of our Corriere della Sera. Corriere della Sera is one of the major newspapers. They have no qualms about putting something like that. I was looking for it here in any newspaper. It was not printed. The flyover of Washington was 50 years to the day of the flyover 50 years ago, and it had a scramble of planes that went after this. I think it was three anomalous objects, 3 lights, and these are so important that we in Europe are putting them on our front page of our papers, but there's a difference in coverage, and I have to tell you, this just happened. I had Linda Howe at the house. We were at the San Marino conference. It comes out that the spirits see something anomalous, that some people are calling a meteor, except that Linda and I could not find the slide. They did find the slide. I think it's SO 56 or 53. I have the number of this slide. And the Italians have the courage to put, in the skies of Mars, Spirit sees a UFO. Bad word, taboo here. I don't know what in the world is happening as far as the possibility that a UFO is not a metallic craft necessarily. It is just an unidentified flying object. It is just an anomalous object. It is not bad to put that there is an anomalous object, possibly, that is seen by Spirit on Mars. I mean, it is not a big scandal. Europe does it. In fact, our magazine's Focus has a front page cover on Mars, and people are just interested. They don't make any big deal out of it. I don't see the incredible amount of censorship that sometimes I see. I look for corroborating stories all over because I communicate with a lot of different journalists. I can communicate with Barry Shamish in Israel, with Boris Chernoff in Russia, with Gilda Baudet in France, and I guarantee you people that we take this thing extremely seriously. This is a magazine in Italy with Dr. Pinotti and with Esen. Now, Esen is present at this conference. Esen is a representative from Turkey, and she's present as a spectator here at the conference, and she knows quite a bit about what goes on in Turkey. They have incredible film footage, and I'll talk very fast because I have so much to tell you that probably in my workshop I can cover the details a little bit more. In Turkey, they have 6, I think, videos of a UFO, anomalous object, that has completely obliterated what looks like a meteor. And you can see the meteor being completely destroyed in air. And this is from commercial pilots that have had this sighting. And then the piece is going sideways. This is on the Sirius website. If you see SN here, ask her about that, because I'm very interested, because I don't know what the alien agenda is. But if this is real, if there is some kind of something that is taking care of the meteors, I want to know this. Okay, so this was very interesting. This was sent to me by Hal Puthoff, and you had this year in America, the Popular Mechanics, when UFOs arrive. And I looked at the welcoming committee, and I kind of agree with a lot of these people, because there's somebody from SETI, and there's Hal who's working on Zero Point, and there's John Glenn. What I don't understand, and I have to be honest with you when I tell you this, is why would you put Jane Goodall, who's in charge of animals and gorillas, in charge of the exopolitics of meeting alien presences? Why would you choose her? I don't understand this. And why would we put alien bodies in the veterinary department of Fort Riley, Kansas, when Colonel Corso talks about the bodies being put in the veterinary unit, like where the horses are? I mean, I can't imagine if the tables were turned and our bodies were put in a veterinary unit on some planet. And so I'm looking at the way we look at exopolitics. I'm looking at the way we look at what's happening here. And but this was very interesting to me, because I'm very, very astute when it comes to what the welcoming committee might look like. and I don't think it will be any kind of formal welcoming committee. So let me start talking about the most important person here. This is Colonel Philip Corso. By accident, if you read my book, you'll realize how I did this story. I did not want to go to Roswell. I did not want to go to the 50th anniversary. I did not want to be involved with anything this serious, but my magazine sent me there, and I ended up in the room next to Colonel Philip Corso. I ended up meeting his son by accident in a crowd, and his son, Philip Jr., asked me to ask the colonel a question in Italian. He is the one that, and both of us together were able to get the colonel to come to Italy twice. Now, the colonel in Italy was able to speak much, much more than he was here. The colonel in Italy made a lot of friends. The colonel was Italian. The colonel was the head of intelligence in Rome from 1944 to 47. Colonel Corso is probably my biggest story, but he's also my biggest responsibility. When you work with someone like that, and he is no longer with us, it is very important that his story go on. I wrote the preface, you can't see it, to the day after Roswell. I call myself the Strom Thurmond of Italy. And here we are taking care of the colonel. A colonel came twice, and my boss, Maurizio Baiata, who's on the left-hand corner, and he's the one that I had worked for in those days and who translated the book. So many people in Europe admired the colonel. So many people in Europe began connecting the dots with what he had to say. To me, that is the single most important book that has come out in the last 50 years as far as witness testimony, a tremendous amount of courage. Now, when the colonel came to Italy, I mean, there's all kinds of stories I don't have time to tell. He met Desmond Leslie on the right-hand side here. Desmond Leslie was one of the people who was with Adamski in the early sightings. And the two of them, I used to sit and listen to those two talk. The two of them knew what they were doing. Desmond Leslie is an ex-pilot. They knew about extraterrestrial presence. They spoke about things very personal, and they're no longer with us. And there's Michael Hesseman over on the left hand. He's a German researcher. These are historic moments for me. I look at this. Now, I have a friend, Ursula Andrus. I have to put her picture here for people because they're in my book. Ursula, his son, Dimitri Hamlin, who's is basically interested in UFOs, asked me if they could meet Colonel Corso, and Ursula just loved him, and she was very interested. There's a lot of people in the media, in the acting field, that are interested in this phenomenon. Colonel was very at home in Rome. The colonel was able to explain and here's an example of what happens when people like Colonel Corso, Travis Walton, who was with me for a week, John Mack, and so forth. When we're talking over pizza, when we are discussing, when I talk to these people, and a lot of them are mentioned in the book, we're at a restaurant, and then they start telling me things, and the colonel was starting to tell me about the alien skin, and he did it on a napkin. He was starting to draw what the alien skin looked like, and I've kept everything, all his notes, everything he was starting to explain to me. This is not imagination. This is real. Here we are at Easter, and Liz, you can see yourself. I spent a week at Easter with them in Foligno, and it was a pleasure to be on a personal level with this man and with Liz and the kids, because what happened was that we were able to really forge a bond where some of this material will still be here. Now, what happened in Italy, we published The Alba di una nuova era, The Dawn of a New Age. It's very important that you understand that he left material behind. This book has not come out in the United States. It's only in Italy. It is his original notes, and has been produced by Maurizio Baiada, my editor. You need to speak to Bill Burns about whether they're going to put this book out in America, but this book is very clear. It's his own handwriting. It's exactly what Colonel said about the Roswell, back engineering the Roswell case. But the words, the dawning of a new age, is really, really important, because when the Colonel met me, he told me about a new world if we could take it. And the Colonel had a contact experience, okay? And I did not want to print it, because I thought if I write about the Colonel's contact experience, then what will happen is people will not believe this man. So I waited until he died before I wrote about it. It is in connecting the dots. It is extremely important, because the message that comes from that, the message that comes from the crop circles, the messages we are getting are messages, positive messages of transformation. So let me encourage you and invite you to listen to them. And the actual interview, word for word, that the Colonel gave me in Roswell is in my book. This is Dr. Pinotti, who is in charge he's like our MUFON director in Italy. This is the San Marino Symposium. This is a world symposium we have every year where all those people I mentioned, the Russian man, the Chinese, the the French. We all get together and discuss this seriously. These are people that have been there. There's Boris Chernoff, there's Richard Haynes, who deals with pilots. We've invited him. Gilles Bourdet from France, who did on the Cometa report. Anybody who's in this field knows that serious research is being done. And these people get together in the independent Republic of San Marino, which means San Marino has nothing to lose because it is not political. It is basically just doing, a symposium. So we get together once a year to discuss this. There is the San Marino Symposium. There we all are. Nick Pope is in this particular picture because he was there. We also invited Frank Drake from SETI. Serious discussion is going on worldwide. May I encourage you in Washington, D.C. to do the very same thing. Serious symposium worldwide. We have Nick Pope, we have Esen that came from Turkey. We have a lot of people from Europe that are here too. Because I guarantee you, we will take the information back worldwide. It will not just stay in Washington, D.C. It will not just stay here. It will be disseminated planetarily, and that is exactly what we need to do. Something like United Nations. Talking about this. This is me with Dr. John Mack and Corrado Balducci. I want to talk about Monsignor Balducci because he's a friend of mine and he lives down the street. I live near the Vatican in Rome. And he has done a lot for the witness testimony angle of the UFO phenomenon. He truly believes that we should be listening to witness testimony. He said that these are people that are not making this up, that there is a phenomenon. Father Balducci believes that whatever's out there is probably a lot more evolved than we are, because he says that if there is extraterrestrial presence, he calls them angels. He thinks, I don't agree necessarily that everything is benevolent, but I do respect the fact that being a Vatican demonologist, having worked in the Vatican, also having been nuncio to Washington, D.C., Padre Balducci has the courage to talk about the taboo, to talk about UFOs, to talk about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And he doesn't say it's the possibility. He said it is desirable. It is the probability. So there is a difference. He said it is desirable that there are others out there. Colonel Corso told me that there were many races categorized in the Pentagon. I think he told me something like 57. So we also have to get out of the idea that it's all gray. It is not all the grays that are visiting or whatever. There are people, there are races, there are visitations, and they've been going on for a long, long time. Now, I want to go through this slideshow really quickly to leave you all the time for the Corso video that I have for you to see. The other story that I have, and people are all mysteriously wondering about this, I'll talk about it more in my workshop, is Dr. Michael Wolff. I was a journalist that covered that story. I went there 4 times. He is extremely interesting. The jury is out, but I really think he was worth researching. He had become a good friend. He is no longer with us anymore. And here's Michael Wolff in a Fellini movie in Italy. People that say he's never left the United States. Well, what is he doing with Fellini in Italy? And I know quite a bit about Fellini and his involvement also in the metaphysical. This is Dr. Wolff with Adriano Forgione. For a long time, I've realized I have to work with other people because I would like other witness testimony to what I do. And I had dragged along my colleague from Notiziario UFO, Adriano Forgione, and Dr. Wolff gave us a piece of UFO, which we had analyzed at the University of Pisa. And he was very adamant about disclosure, but he called it slow processed release of information. So if you can take that in, it means that disclosure does not come in 24 hours. It means people, through movies, through articles, through books, through conferences like this, will surely get a clue. And he said it had to be slow. Okay, I want to stop this because I don't know how much time I'll have, and I really want you to see. These are the other Italians that are on this. I don't know if you can shut this down and talk about Colonel Corso a little bit. I would like to show the video if somebody could press the button. Colonel Corso was on a primetime show, considered our Johnny Carson show. And Maurizio Costanzo is seen every night. And is seen by most Italians, I mean, millions and millions of Italians. And this is a piece of the appearance of Colonel Corso. This is the first time Maurizio Costanzo ever kept quiet. He was in total shock. And I think that basically you need to listen to this testimony because I think it means so much for all of us, because it took a tremendous amount of courage. He was telling the truth, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to show about 6 minutes of this, and the rest I'll show in my workshop. If you want to, somebody press the button there. I have it queued up. Okay, let me talk a little bit about this. The Colonel explains detail by detail what his involvement was. And then, okay, you shouldn't have rewound though, because this is the Italian part. Can we fast forward? Because this is, yeah, fast forward, because this is basically. Okay, if you could fast forward, it'd be great. At the end of his discussion, because Costanzo wanted to know what happened to the bodies, and Colonel told him that he had seen the autopsy report and so forth. Costanzo asks him, and you won't see that part because I can't show the whole video. He says, "Were there other crashes?" And the Colonel said, "Yes." And Costanzo said, "Please don't talk about them." So he was curious enough to ask, but it didn't go on. It should be faster. We should go. Yeah, fast forward, because that's not the show. This is the television that was done. Just if you could just fast forward, yeah, when he's on the stage. Just fast forward, and I'll tell you when. Just thank you. So anyway, while he was discussing this, people realized that this man, was totally credible, that he was coming forth with information, and that a lot of our technology, and he was in charge of it, in research and development, came from this crash. And he said there were others, and he never talked to me individually about what others were. There's a piece of the movie Roswell that you people saw yesterday. It's the Italian television put it all together. They really know that people are interested in this, and they do go ahead and talk about it. And when they get credible witnesses, the way we did with the Colonel, they're very, very happy to deal with it. Are we getting there? Yeah, we should. Okay, here it is. A little bit faster, because we're just a little bit faster, because this is the beginning of the show, and then we cut right into his appearances. Now, what you're going to do is have to a little bit faster, yeah, because they're going to go over to him in a minute. Yeah, there, right there. Okay, they have to translate for him, so you have to have a little bit of patience. I'm only going to show you a piece of this. Go ahead. If you could turn the audio. Yep. We need audio. Okay, you want to turn the light on? Would that help? Because if you can't show it, then I'll show it at my workshop, and that's it, basically, because you may have to shut mine off to do that one. Okay, got it? Well, I don't know what to tell you, because actually he's very, very honest about speaking, and
Can you tell us what he's saying?
yeah. Well, basically he talks about his the first time that he had the experience with the Roswell incident when he was in Fort Riley, Kansas, and as I mentioned before, this sensitive cargo was put into the veterinary unit, and the officer on duty said, "Come and see. We have this cargo that came from Roswell," and he says that he lifted up the tarpaulin and saw this body, and he describes it as a gray, oversized head. He thought it was a children's coffin because he was so small, but he basically looked at it, and he said he was startled, but he was used to the war, so he said, then got over it very quickly. And he said he kept all this information in the back of his head for later, because I think the Colonel down deep knew what was going on anyway. But anyway, he said that he kept it for later. And
a Fort Riley nel Kansas.
Okay, they're good.
And one night I was the post-duty officer.
E una sera ero come ufficiale di picchetto di guardia.
And I was told in my instructions, there is a very sensitive cargo in a building down in the veterinarian section, because we had horses still in.
E mi era stato detto che c'era un cargo di estrema importanza che era nella sezione veterinaria di questo centro dove io ero, perché c'erano anche i cavalli.
There was a sergeant on duty when I went around 2 o'clock in the morning.
E mi ricordo che quando entrai di turno c'era questo sergente che era di turno, erano le 2 del mattino,
and I asked him, "How's everything here, Sergeant?" He said, "Fine."
e gli ho chiesto: sergente, tutto bene? E lui mi ha detto: sì, tutto bene.
And since he knew me very well, he said, "Do you want to see the sensitive cargo? Do you want to go back?" I said, "Yes, let's go back in the back room."
E siccome mi conosceva bene, mi ha detto: vuoi venire con me a vedere questo cargo così speciale, importante? Io gli ho detto sì.
And I saw 6 large boxes.
E così mi sono trovato di fronte a queste 6 grandi scatole.
So I went up to one box, raised the lid,
Mi sono avvicinata a una di queste scatole, ho alzato il coperchio
and I raised the tarpaulin over top the cover.
e ho quindi sollevato questo coperchio.
And I shined my flashlight in.
Ho acceso la torcia
And I saw this thing. At first I thought it was a child.
e ho visto questa cosa che di primo acchito mi era sembrato un bambino
And it was floating in a liquid.
ed era dentro questo liquido.
But then I shined my flashlight up towards the head.
Ma poi lanciai questo fascio di luce della torcia verso la testa
And I noticed the head was large. Not large in sense of large. It was large in proportion to the body.
e vidi che la testa era grande, non grande in quanto tale, ma grande rispetto al resto del corpo.
And I saw it had 2 dark eyes, slanted, large.
E c'erano questi 2 occhi scuri, obliqui e grandi.
No mouth.
Non c'era
There was
bocca,
a slit there, but not a mouth like ours.
c'era una feritoia, però non era una bocca.
No nose.
Niente naso,
But the nose but there were 2 holes there.
bensì vi erano 2 buchi.
And later I'll tell you what we found in them.
E poi più tardi vi spiegherò.
And no ears.
Non c'erano orecchie
And the head, there was no hair, just something like mine. No,
e la testa era senza capelli, proprio come me.
and there was a reason for that.
E c'era
Which I'll-
anche per questo un
which
motivo.
I'll just- Then the arms were long
Braccia lunghe,
and thin,
sottili
and it had only 4 fingers on each hand.
e solo 4 dita per ogni mano.
The legs were long and thin, and they had no web or anything. They had 5 toes like us.
Le gambe erano lunghe e sottili e avevano 5 dita come
And
noi.
the whole body was a grayish sort of color.
Il corpo era più o meno grigio come colore
And when I finally saw that this was something different, I was a little startled.
e quando ho capito che mi trovavo di fronte a qualcosa di diverso sono rimasto un attimo sorpreso, a bocca aperta.
And it was dead.
Era morto.
And I'd seen bodies before, so in 2 or 3 minutes, very quickly I recovered from that. And the first thing I did, I told the sergeant, "Leave here. You aren't supposed to be in here."
E siccome ero già stato abituato a vedere comunque dei cadaveri nella mia vita, nel giro di 2 o 3 minuti mi sono ripreso, mi sono voltato verso il sergente e gli ho detto: la prego di lasciare immediatamente
And
la stanza.
I'll meet you outside.
L'incontro e ci rivediamo fuori dalla stanza.
Then I left the room, put the covers back. Now all this lasted only about 30 seconds.
Tutto questo è durato circa 30 secondi.
So I went outside and I told the sergeant, "Where did the cargo come from?"
Quindi dopo aver richiuso il coperchio sono uscito, sono andato dal sergente e gli ho detto: sergente, qual è la provenienza di questo
He
cargo?
said it came from an airfield near Roswell, New Mexico.
E lui mi ha detto che veniva da un campo aereo vicino a Roswell, New Mexico.
And it was on its way to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Ed era diretto verso un'altra base aerea.
And a lot of people have asked me, well, why didn't they send it in an airplane?
Molte persone mi hanno detto: ma perché non l'hanno inviato via aerea?
Because a lot of generals figured if we send it in an airplane in those days and the airplane crashes, we lose the whole cargo.
E la risposta è che molti generali ritenevano che se l'avessero fatto, qualora ci fosse stato un incidente aereo, avrebbero perso il materiale.
And they said we send it in trucks and one truck crashes, we still have the other 2. So they decided to send it by land instead of by air.
E poi invece hanno pensato: se noi andiamo con i camion, magari si può rompere un camion, ma c'è comunque l'altro, e quindi hanno preferito la via terrestre.
So then I decided to forget this incident, put it in the back of my head, and wait till years later when I could corroborate or prove what this was, because I didn't know at the time.
Ho quindi deciso di dimenticare quello che avevo visto, di metterlo in un angolino nella mia testa per rimandarlo in un altro momento della mia vita più avanti per poter riuscire a spiegare quello che in quel momento non ero riuscita a spiegare.
Years later, then the years passed. In 2 years, I ended up in another war in Korea.
Passano gli anni, dopo 2 anni mi ritrovo nella guerra di Corea.
And then I came back and I became President Eisenhower's military aide.
Poi divento assistente del presidente Eisenhower.
Then I became a commander of a missile battalion, an atomic missile battalion.
Poi mi ritrovo al comando di un battaglione di missili atomici.
Then when I came back to the United States from Germany, I was appointed chief of the U.S. Army's Research and Development Foreign Technology Division.
E poi, quando torno dalla Germania, vengo nominato capo del laboratorio di ricerca e sviluppo per l'esercito americano.
And there I found out what this thing was 14 years before.
E fu così che 14 anni dopo scoprì di che cosa si trattava, la scoperta di 14 anni prima.
Our own laboratory that we financed and belonged to us, the Army Research, had made an autopsy report on this being.
Questo laboratorio aveva fatto una autopsia su questo essere.
And the autopsy report came to me.
Ho avuto modo di leggere questa autopsia
And at this point, not only did I learn what was in those caskets,
e così non solo appresi che cosa c'era in queste famose scatole che vidi allora,
but General Trudeau, my superior,
ma il mio superiore, generale Trudeau,
appointed me head of the Foreign Technology Division and gave me the files.
mi diede l'incarico di poter dirigere questo centro di ricerca e mi diede tutti i files relativi a questo report di autopsia.
And in the file, I found artifacts from the crash in Roswell.
E fu così che grazie a questi file ritrovai questi manufatti dello schianto di Oswell.
And I was given the orders to do what had to be done with them, find out in the government, in industry, in universities, in the army, what we're doing along those lines of these things we had.
E quindi mi fu dato l'incarico di vedere nel settore di governo, industria e via dicendo che cosa si faceva con questo tipo di manufatti.
Now at this stage I want to tell the audience, don't think that we were so brilliant that we knew what we had.
Adesso vorrei dire a questo punto al pubblico, non pensate che pensavamo di essere così brillanti, di sapere esattamente che cosa ci trovavamo di fronte.
But we had an instinct and we gradually gave us out to industry, and they who were working in that direction, our own laboratories, and we gave these items out, not the item itself, but a research and development project.
Però diciamo che da questo materiale noi avevamo avuto qualche spunto, qualche idea, dal quale poi abbiamo tratto le ricerche che sono state affidate ai vari settori industriali.
And to show you how difficult this was, I had a little thing that looked like a flashlight.
Per esempio, per dirvi quanto tutto questo era complesso, avevo questo piccolo oggetto che poteva sembrare come una piccola torcia,
Which came from the crash.
che era uno dei resti di questo famoso
It
schianto.
had indentations and lines on it,
E c'erano sopra delle incisioni
and I couldn't get it to come on.
e non riuscivo ad attivarlo.
So, like a typical stupid human being,
Così come un tipico essere umano un po' stupido,
I said, the battery's dead.
ho pensato,
I
vabbè,
figured.
forse la batteria non funziona più.
And it wasn't all the battery.
Ma non era la questione della
A few months
batteria.
later, I took it to our atomic laboratory at Fort Belvoir, Virginia,
Qualche mese dopo lo portai al nostro laboratorio atomico nella Virginia
and I asked the commander, turn radiation on this object and long low waves, frequency.
e gli dissi, attivate le radiazioni su questo oggetto.
And it came on.
Ed ecco che si illuminò.
So then I reported back to the general, we send it to our electronic laboratories in the hospital.
Okay, I want to stop
because
it because
was
I
ma-
will
it
go
was
over if
measuring
I show any
brainwaves.
more, but I'll
Yeah.
show some more in my
L'autopsia
workshop.
di quell'essere.
Okay, we'll
Chi ha
stop this
detto?
because I
L'autopsia.
have 5 minutes to
Oh.
wrap this up. And I didn't show you all the rest of the people involved in disclosure, but I mean, if I had to go back to Europe now, I interviewed a 93-year-old Pierluigi Ighina that worked with Marconi Marconi, as you know, invented the radio, or it was instrumental in inventing the radio. And Egina just died, and Egina told me, and this is something that I have to share with you as a lot of scientists, that he knew that Marconi and he had had some kind of contact. Now, if the colonel has had some kind of contact, and people have had contact, whether it be through some kind of inspiration they get, or some kind of physical contact, and it's hard for me to talk about this because I've never had any of this happening to me. We have to listen to the fact that there are messages being given. We have to listen to the fact that the sightings are over nuclear bases. We have to listen to the fact that we are in a strategic time in history. We have to pay attention. I am not up here just to talk about this because it is a hobby. I'm up here to tell you that information is powerful. I'm here to encourage you to keep researching this. I'm here to tell you that there's been some very, very courageous people that have come forth, that this has been around for a long time, that maybe it's the time that we start taking this seriously, and it's the time that we are all inviting some kind of betterment for this planet, because instead of looking at each other as Italy, America, Russia, and so forth, I think we should start looking at each other as we are the human species. We live on this planet. We are human. And we would like to, if there is a situation, and I'm convinced from my research there is, we're going to need to develop a way of dealing with it. If it doesn't come from the top up, we are going to have to develop exopolitics, as Michael Salla says. We are going to have to develop a way of dealing with contact that is intelligent, not putting them in the veterinary quarters. I mean, we are going to have to look at this seriously. This has got to stop being a ridicule factor. We've got to start looking at the future for all of us, for the planet, for the condition we're in, and hopefully we will be welcomed in the cosmos, not as a potential enemy, but as friends. Okay, that's it for now. We'll talk at the workshop. In the dark, I can't see the paper. It's tomorrow sometime. Yeah, tomorrow. It's Sunday. I think it's 1 or something. Oh, yeah, okay. There is a disclosure program witness. I helped Stephen Greer with that. So if you want to talk to Bob Vanderklok and talk about real witness testimony, there is somebody here.
This is Len Fredko, ladies and gentlemen. Come and talk.
All right, I think I did pretty well for time. Excellent. Did I do okay? I just don't know how to. Okay.
You gotta do it so fast. You don't get a chance to get into these things.
I got 15 minutes. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed that video. I know, the way he was amazing. It brings tears to my eyes.
I might mention that Jim Mars is scheduled next in this room, and he will be here momentarily for his presentation.
Okay, so
Don't forget to visit the vendors in the exhibit hall.